Olá, sou a Mariana Alvim, bem-vindos ao Vale a Pena, o meu podcast onde conhecemos as pessoas enquanto leitores, com o apoio da WUC, a maior livraria online portuguesa. Fiquem por aí, vale a pena.
Today I have with me Rachel Lynn Solomon, the author. Rachel was born in Seattle, graduated in journalism from the University of Washington. She currently lives in Amsterdam with her husband. Am I correct? You still live there?
Yeah.
Are you there right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I love Amsterdam. It's a great city.
Me too, yeah.
So before becoming a writer, Rachel worked in journalism and radio, including at the Seattle Times and Quao Public Radio. And that explains the book, The X Talk. We'll get there because it happens in the radio station. So in high school, you sang and you played keyboard in an all-girl band. Is that true?
Yeah, I did, yes. Fortunately, very few recordings have survived.
We all say that about our teenage years.
Yes.
So you were a part of a group that set a Guinness World Record for the most natural redheads in one place?
Yes, I was.
I dig up some information.
There was a lot of sunscreen involved.
Oh, I bet, of course. And I know that you also enjoy tap dancing in your free time. And you have this quirky hobby of collecting lipsticks.
Yeah, I guess it's been on and off over the years, but yeah, I love, trying to find the perfect red lipstick.
You're not wearing one right now.
I'm not. If this was TV for sure, but radio, it's always more casual, right?
Okay. Some of your well-known books are translated into Portuguese and include The X Talk, Fala com o Ex, The Weather Girl, Faça chuva ou Faça sol, and the last translated into Portugal, Business or Pleasure, Negócios ou prazer. And your book, Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, was a New York Times and USA Today bestseller. Wow. So you write about imperfect people falling in love, bringing a touch of realism and humor to your stories. So let's start with, I read it, I think last year, Fala com o Ex, The X Talk. You want to tell me a little bit about Shea Goldstein and Dominic Young?
Yes, of course. So the X Talk is very closely inspired by my own experience working in radio in Seattle. And it follows two people at a radio station who hate each other, but they are forced into hosting a new podcast that the goal of which is to save the station that is struggling. And they decide to do something a little different. They decide to do a dating and relationships podcast. But the catch is it's going to be called The X Talk, and they want it to be hosted by two people who used to date. And their boss thinks that because they have all this animosity between them, that people would believe that they are exes. So they are pretending to be exes as they're hosting this radio show, talking about relationships, getting more intimate, and all the while they are, of course, falling in love. And as the show gets more popular, they have to navigate, their true feelings for each other and the ethics of lying to all their listeners.
And well, you're inspired because of the fact that you work on a radio station.
I did, yes. So in college, I studied journalism, and then I worked in commercial radio for a short time, and then in public radio, so for an NPR radio station in Seattle for a handful of years after I graduated college. But, nothing as scandalous as the X Talk ever took place. At least nothing that I was aware of.
You know what I liked about your book, The X Talk? What I remember the most is that finally, we have books that they're in control, even on the sex scenes. We were used to more traditional sex scenes and the guys in charge. And this wasn't the case. And it was great because it was finally, well, of course, we're having more and more time, but it was modern. Thank you.
That's something that's really important to me because I grew up reading books where the woman was never in control and never had any agency when it came to the relationship or her own body. And when I write sex scenes, I really try to make it feel, as equal as possible, and often putting the woman in control, because I think that can be very empowering to read. And if I had grown up with some of those books, then I would probably have been much less passive in my early relationships.
Yeah, definitely. And this was it sounds like now that I've read your latest book, Negócios ou prazer, Business or Pleasure, which I love the title. we have a whole new level of that because she's totally in control. And actually, she tells him that he's not. So you want to talk a little about business or pleasure?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that book is really like is kind of a direct response to all of the lack of agency that I grew up reading, because it is a book about a woman. She's a ghostwriter. She has a terrible one-night stand with an actor, having no idea who he is, only to learn the next day that she has been hired to write his memoir. And as the two of them are working together, she eventually reveals that their night together was not as magical as he thought it was. And she offers to give him some pointers in bed. So she's essentially teaching him how to become better in bed over the course of the book. And it really, I hope that it feels, fun and exciting and sexy, but also, like really empowering. I want my books to feel both empowering and realistic, while never feeling preachy. Like I never want anything to feel like a how-to, or like I'm standing on some,
it's not a manual. It's not a manual.
Yeah, exactly. And I never want it to seem like I'm looking down on anyone, right? Like you really want to feel as though you're in casual conversation with the reader.
Yeah, I think you got that. So mission accomplished. Congratulations. I have to tell you, I think it's an important book. And also, I felt shy reading it. That's why it's an important book, because I'm not used to this. Pardon?
Sometimes I felt shy writing it. I feel like I almost detach myself from the books when I'm writing, because, in real life, I think I'm a very, often very quiet. I'm very short. I think it's very unsuspecting that these are the kinds of books that I would write, especially if you knew me when I was like in high school. I think I would be kind of horrified by the kind of books that I'm writing now, which I think just shows why I needed those books at the time.
Yeah, exactly. I felt shy, and at the same time, that meant even more that it means that it's important.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're not used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of women have to give this to a lot of men.
I've heard that in my DMs sometimes.
Yeah, I'm being honest here. So Business and Pleasure and Talk to the Ex and other books that you've written, and 3 of them are in Portugal, and hopefully more will come. And congratulations. Now I want to get to know you as a reader. When and what do you read?
I try to read outside of my usual genres when I'm on a really tight deadline, because then, if I'm really in the middle of a book that is giving me trouble, then I don't want to read a gorgeous romance novel that just makes me feel like, well, why am I even bothering? But I do love to read romance, obviously, when I'm not on a tight deadline, because I find it very inspiring and it makes me really excited about the genre. But in my, general free time, I do listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks. So most of my reading is done on audio. And I love, honestly, celebrity memoirs, which is a huge part of the reason why I wrote Business or Pleasure, because the main character is ghostwriting celebrity memoirs. I enjoy thrillers. I enjoy nonfiction about pop culture, usually. Yeah, so I guess, I try to diversify as much as possible. I could definitely do a lot more. I love a good, sad literary fiction book. I love Sally Rooney.
Have you read? She has a new book now, Intermezzo.
I haven't read it yet. I even got a signed, special edition through Waterstones, and it's just sitting on the coffee table. I'm too afraid to touch it.
The cover is beautiful. It's white and dark blue.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I bought it as well, but haven't read it yet.
Yeah. Eventually.
So I'm not going to spoil, but do you also like the genre that Chandler Cohen, your protagonist, the female protagonist, she likes to write some sort of books? Mm-hmm. Do you like that genre?
I read a lot of them growing up.
Because I feel that you know the structure, the way she explains it, it means it shows that you know.
Yeah. I was definitely a fan growing up. So I feel like I put a little piece of myself and my interests in each of my characters. And sometimes it's an interest, not currently, but something that I used to be really passionate.
It's in your baggage.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so for those who haven't read yet, so Talk to the Ex and Business or Pleasure. Business or Pleasure has a little insight on the protagonists of the previous book. So I love that surprise. She mentions them as en passant.
It's just like a paragraph, but yes, I try to connect all my books in a small way. There's a much bigger scene in my next book, which I'm excited about. Yeah.
Okay. We'll know soon.
Yes.
So, and when I asked who would you have dinner with, you said Meg Cabot, the author of The Princess Diaries. We have it in Portugal, O Diário da Princesa.
Yes, she is the main reason that I am a writer. I grew up obsessed with The Princess Diaries, obsessed with all her books, honestly. There was, it was 2 books, but it was about a girl who saves the life of the president and falls in love with the first son. And it was called All American Girl. And that was like my all-time favorite book as a teenager. It was just it was really, really cute. And Meg Cabot just has this incredible voice, and she just really tapped into how it feels to be an awkward teenager. Not all the pop culture references hold up, but reading her books always feels so, so comforting. And I ate them up like candy, and she was just at the top of my inspiration list because she wrote in so many different genres. She wrote in different age categories. I read her blog religiously. Yeah, like I wanted to be her or be like her.
That's a great compliment. Did you know that, and I have to ask that to you as well, she wrote her first historical romance novels under the pen name Patricia Cabot. Yeah. But I didn't know the reason. And the reason was she didn't want her grandmother to find out that she was writing books with romance in them.
Oh, funny. I don't think I knew that either.
She was hiding from her grandmother. How was your family reaction to your bold books?
I feel like we just don't discuss that part of them. They're not allowed to read business or pleasure.
Yeah, exactly.
My mom came to the book launch for that one, and she bought a book, which was, very nice, parent mom thing to do. And then she came up to get it signed, and I signed it to her, and I wrote, "Do not read this."
She will, or she did.
I think she might have, but we just don't talk about it.
Okay. So now let's get to the books you loved reading.
Sure, yeah.
When we first talked about this podcast, it was before summer. And you told me the books you enjoyed a lot. And I told you, actually, we've met after the summer in the event Book 2.0. And I told you, because of you, I read 2 books on my vacation. And the first one, and I loved it, Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams.
Yes, that's such a fantastic book. It is probably going to end up being in my top reads of the year. It came out a few years ago, and I bought it when it came out because it had a lot of buzz. It's a British book, and by a Black British author, and I think it was pitched as kind of a Black British a Black Bridget Jones.
It was, yes.
Yeah, I think even the author kind of pitched it that way, but I almost feel like that's kind of derivative. And I know that that's sort of how pitches work. You have a blank version of blank, you kind of a way to make things catchy. But this one it's following a woman in her, I think she's just in her 20s. She's working in journalism. It's been a few months since I read it, so I'm trying to.
Yeah, but I'll help you. She's 25, yeah, and she's a journalist.
Yeah, she's just dealing with these. It's not a romance the way that Bridget Jones is, because she is in these horrible relationships with people who treat her terribly, and she's making awful decisions and just really complicated, kind of dark stuff. But she has this. The writer has this incredible sense of humor, and it just really gripped me emotionally. It's hard to say that it is a funny, hilarious book, because it is, but the main character is just you want to give her a hug on every single page.
Yeah, it's darkly comic.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, she's a 25-year-old Jamaican British woman living in London, and it's after a messy breakup, which she doesn't acknowledge it's a breakup, and then she works hard in the journal that she works for. She wants to talk about Black Lives Matter, but her boss doesn't listen to her. Her ex-boyfriend is white and she's Black, so they have differences even her family doesn't want to listen because she's not talking about Jesus or water raids. They're not interested, her family. So she's like, she doesn't relate to anyone. She's kind of alone taking the wrong decisions despite having friends, right? Mm-hmm. So the book is known for its humor and honesty and emotional depth. And I think it's more deep than Bridget Jones. I'm with you.
Absolutely. No, it's, again, I feel like they're just because they're both like funny and British and about like a woman who's kind of trying to figure out her life, but completely different tones and different messages.
Yeah, totally. Queenie, I tried to speak to several publishing houses to bring it to Portugal to translate it because I think I'm trying. I won't promise anything. It's not up to me.
I'm surprised that it hasn't been more widely translated because I think it for sure has that appeal.
Yeah, and it's her debut novel. And it won the Book of the Year at the 2020 British Book Awards. It was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for Reader's Favorite Fiction and Debut Novel. So it has lots of prizes and medals. And we have lots of important authors like Jojo Moyes, Candice Bushnell, the author of Sex and the City, lots of Dolly Alderton, Bernardine Evaristo, also winner of the Booker Prize. They all praise the book. So, yeah.
Wow, yeah.
So Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. There's a coincidence, and I'll show you later in this conversation. But she's a huge fan of music, the author, and she often creates playlists for her characters to help her develop their personalities.
Oh, that's fun. I do playlists for my books, but I haven't thought about doing them for specific characters. It's a good idea.
It's a great idea then.
Oh, yeah.
I also read this one a long time ago. Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan.
Oh, yeah. This book also just reached inside my chest and grabbed my heart. For anyone listening, and I mean, for you too, Mariana, it makes sense because it is a book entirely about audio. And it's written by Julia Whelan, who is a, quite esteemed audiobook narrator herself. My very first audiobook was by Julia Whelan, and it really got me into audiobooks.
Wow. She's considered the Adele of audiobooks.
Yeah. She's just phenomenal. But this book, Thank You for Listening, is about a woman who's an audiobook narrator who has a kind of fling with someone at a book convention and then develops this texting relationship with a very mysterious male narrator as they are working together on a new audiobook project. Of course, it's the same person. We all know that from the beginning. And it is a romance, and it is gorgeously written, really has some amazing insights about the audiobook world and just narration in general, and about romance as well. And it's just written by someone who clearly is an expert in these fields and has such a love for them.
Yeah, even for those who don't have a relationship with audio, this is a romance, and it's about, she opens her heart to us, right? The narrator. While we are reading, we get to know what happened to her. She had an accident, so she wanted to be an actress, couldn't be anymore. So that's why she's only a narrator. And then when you get to know why you were so with her, you want to hold her hand, and yeah, the main character, she wears an eye patch over one eye, and you don't know what actually happened until much later in the book. Yeah. So Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan. She has in her real life, she has narrated over 400 audiobooks across various genres. And that's why she's called the Adele of audiobooks. She has exceptional narration skills. Yeah, no, if anyone listening has never read one by her, I mean, this is the perfect one to start with because, of course, she narrates the audiobook herself, and it's such a phenomenal listening experience. Okay, I haven't tried listening to it, and now I'm curious. Thank You for Listening. Another book you chose, We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. I haven't read this one yet. Tell me about it. Yeah, so Nina LaCour is one of my all-time favorite authors. She's a California-based author, and the reason I say this is because there is such a love for California, like almost as a character in all of her books, and I think it's described so beautifully. Like California just sort of feels
And usually, I think it's usually Northern California, usually around the San Francisco Bay Area, but it usually feels like it's such an integral part of the characters. And We Are Okay, I think, is her biggest book. It came out a while back, and it is mostly about a girl who was in her first year of college navigating the recent loss of her grandfather. And so for anyone who had a close relationship with their grandparents, anyone who is dealing with grief, it's just a really stunning, heartfelt book. And all of her books, she has this spare lyrical writing style that is one of my favorite things to read. And I always wish that I could write that way, but I think I'm a bit wordier, unfortunately. But that's really my favorite kind of writing, is when you can get across the emotion in as few words as possible.
And then there's this story that she's in grief, as you said, but then she decided to put everything back. So she went alone to college, but then she reunites with her best friend, isn't it?
Yeah, and they sort of have a complicated, romantic relationship.
So it's Marian and Mabel. Nina LaCour, she's an American author, born, as you said, in San Francisco. She's primarily known for her young adult novels with queer and romantic storylines. And, about her, I always try to find curiosity or funny facts about the authors, same as I found about you. So I know she loves cooking and gardening and finds it therapeutic.
That makes sense, because she also had her adult debut that came out a couple years ago called Yerba Buena. It's about two women in the Bay Area who are working at a restaurant, and one of them is a flower designer. Like, she works on the floral arrangements, and it's, again, described so beautifully.
You know how much she has several books. The one you mentioned, We Are Okay. Before that, she had Hold Still, Everything Leads to You. Then your choice, We Are Okay, Watch Over Me. And the one you mentioned, Yerba Buena, she launched it 2 years ago in 2022, but it took her 2 decades to complete it.
Wow.
And she was about 20 when she started it, and she stopped. And then, nearly 2 decades to complete it.
That's incredible. I mean, I feel like sometimes you're maybe not ready to tell a particular story, or like a book finds you at the right time. So I can understand that.
Yeah. So We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. Mm-hmm. The next one you chose, The Neighbor Favor, Kristina Forest. I also read this one because of you.
I'm glad to hear that I was such an influencer.
You did my summer vacation.
Yeah.
Took care of it.
This is a fun one. So it's hopefully not going to make anyone cry. It is a romantic comedy about a woman who works in publishing as an assistant, who starts up a correspondence with this like long lost author of her favorite fantasy novel. And when her publishing house wants to republish that book, she is kind of drawn into this, kind of drawn back into that world. And also, turns out the guy is her neighbor. So it's another kind of like mistaken identity book where, they're like writing letters and falling in love, but then also falling in love in real life. And it also has a lot of interesting commentary about publishing. And the main character is a Black woman working in publishing. The author she's corresponding with is a Black fantasy author, and just has a lot of discussions about what it's like to be a person of color in that industry.
When you said that, then he's her neighbor, he finds that out first.
Yes. I read that. See, you read these much more recently than I did, so I don't remember all the details.
Yeah, it's Lily Green and Nick Brown, and they meet. Also, another coincidence. I see you like coincidences. Like, they met before with anonymous texts, and then they get to live in the same building and didn't know they were each other's.
No, I mean, romantic comedies would not exist without coincidences. Coincidences are really the currency in romance, and it's fun because I think there are so many weird coincidences like that in real life.
Yeah, good point. You're right. So, funny facts about Kristina Forest: she can't start her day without a cup of coffee. And here's the coincidence. She also has a playlist. She loves listening to music while she writes, and she often creates playlists for her characters as well.
Oh, wow. I cannot listen to music while I write. I need silence.
But what you said a while ago, you said you also create playlists for your books. So when you do that?
Yeah, those are like to get me amped up to write, or like to get me in the mood of it. Yeah, like they're really just sort of to set the mood, to set the vibe. Yeah, and it's often it'll be songs that feel like the book, but sometimes it'll also just be songs that I'm really into when I'm working on the book.
Yeah, but we can read your culture, your musical culture, because you've mentioned a lot of Northwest musics, right?
Yeah, I do. I tend to.
And she has that favorite girls band and the T-shirt and all. I had to investigate who they were. I didn't know them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's in Business or Pleasure. The main character loves Sleater-Kinney, which is an old band in the Northwest. Yeah, I actually recently saw them because they got back together and were touring again.
Okay, so what's their name?
Sleater-Kinney.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't remember Sleater-Kinney. So now I have a difficult question for you.
Okay.
We have Queenie by Candice, Carty-Williams. Thank you for listening, Julia Whelan. We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. And The Neighbor Favor, Kristina Forest. Just women. Now realized. Only women authors. Pick one, Rachel.
A favorite or just...
Yeah, imagine like this conversation. Instead of asking you 4 books you loved, I would only ask you one.
I think I have to say Queenie. I mean, it really just made a huge impact on me when I read it.
Yeah. Actually, because I've also read these books, I would choose that one too. The one I haven't read was We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. The rest, yeah, I'm with you. But I also love the thank you for listening. So thank you for sharing your books with me and us, our listeners. And now I have recommendations for you. I know you love Meg Cabot and also I didn't read the Princess Diaries though. We had Portuguese authors that I preferred at the time. But when I was before my 30s, I read The Queen of Babble. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that one.
There were 3 books and I love that. So I also recommend, have you read, of course, Jojo Moyes?
Yes. I've only read, like the popular ones.
Okay, but I recommend you all, especially, actually, I interviewed her for this podcast, if you want to listen to the conversation. And she also picks her favorite ones, her favorite reads. But I recommend you The Giver of Stars.
Oh, I have not read that one.
You'll love it because it's also about books and you have that special, crush. So I recommend you The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. I recommend you Marian Keyes. Have you read her?
No, but she's been on my list, actually.
I recommend The Grown-Ups.
Okay.
And The Break. Actually, The Break, they're more adults than your characters. The Break is a couple. They're married for a long time now. And he decides to take a break off the wedding, of the marriage. And she's like, what do you mean a break? A 1-year break. And she says, but are you going? He was going away. And then he said, it's like we're not married. We can do anything. So we are with her throughout that year, that gap year of their...
That's a really interesting premise.
Yeah, it's a great premise. I loved it. And I recommend to you. And also The Grown-Ups. The premise is a girl. The first chapter is a family dinner. And there's this nice girl in the family. Then she starts to telling everything. Like you always have a filter. Like even if the dinner is not well cooked, you're not going to say it's not good, right? So she starts being too honest. And they were like, what's happening here? And the story goes back before that dinner. And you get to know all the characters that are on the table. And then you go again, the end of the book, until that dinner. And she knows she bumped her head. That's why she has no filter. So she says everything. And it's great because it's about human nature. And I also recommend to you Marian Keyes.
Yeah, those both sound great. Thank you.
Yeah, Grown-Ups and The Break. And then last recommendation. I think this is the type of book that you...
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
Honey and Spice by Bolu, Babalola. It's also in Portuguese.
Yes, no, this one has been on my list. I've heard really good things.
Yeah. It was a Reese Witherspoon book club choice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariana. This was so much fun.
You too. Thank you. And I'll keep reading you and lots of success.
I will get to work on your recommendations.
Great. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. And thank you for those who are listening. Para a semana, há mais.
Yeah, well, this was super fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Thank you for giving me your time. Okay, so bye-bye.